All right, so we are live. I'm excited to dive in with you, Matt. Matt Harding, the CTO of Zippity. Just to kind of set the table here, Matt, do you want to give me and people listening a short description of what Zippity is doing and why you joined the company, why you're working on the company?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, so Zippity is a seed stage startup. I joined the company about 3 years ago, and our whole premise is that there's a lot of on-site service businesses out there. Think of people like landscapers or house cleaners or pool cleaners, any sort of business that comes to your house. And the software that they have today is basically just not very customer friendly. It's mainly set up for back-end accounting and making it easy to run your business and optimize for the people on the back end. But it doesn't answer basic questions like when's my technician going to show up, or what do I do if there's a problem with my appointment? What do I need to do to reschedule? That kind of stuff. And that's where Zippity comes in. So we build software to make those on-site service experiences just fundamentally better.
So it's not as much a peer-to-peer model, or is it? So are you handling the customer experience start to finish, or more partnering with existing companies?
We partner with existing companies. A lot of them are really small businesses. So we have a bunch of single owner operators on the platform, but then a bunch of people with 2 to 5 employees, right? They're running their business. They sign up to use Zippity. We give them a website for them to use and send to their customer base to book appointments. And then we handle the on-site service interaction, all the emails, text messages, that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Were you part of the early days in thinking about the structure of the model, or what was the state of the company when you jumped on board?
Yeah, we've gone through a couple pretty major changes with the company. When I first joined 3 years ago, we were actually we were doing the services ourselves. We employed 10 technicians. They were all automotive technicians, so they would do car detailing, car maintenance, tire swaps, and they'd go to people's homes or workplaces and do these services. So we started out not as a software company at all, but I was still running the software from those days, and then just over time we decided that the way that we wanted to scale this thing was to bring it to more industries than we could hire technicians for. And so we transitioned from being a service business to a software business.
Was that the history of the founders had been in mechanics or car repair?
Our CEO Ed was there's some good photos of him. He was previously in the Air Force. There's some good photos of him actually doing the first detailing on some of those cars. He came up with the idea when he was at business school, but he's had his hands in the business from the early days.
That's fun. And where are you guys now in terms of the size of the company? Either whatever you can mention or top of mind, but either revenue or money raised or people in the company. To give a sense of scale.
Yeah, we've got about 15 people at the company. I think that's probably what I'm comfortable with right now.
Yeah, and you started about 3 years ago?
Yep.
Awesome. And what areas? How is the company geographically available? Is it a launch by city model, or is it available? Can't be available everywhere, but
it's everywhere in the U.S. We've talked about it, and at some point in the future, we'll probably be looking toward expansion to other areas, like doing a marketplace or something like that. At that point, you really have to be have a good density and be pretty disciplined about what cities you go to. But for us right now, we don't need that kind of density. We just want to get our software into as many businesses' hands as we can.
That's cool.
We actually have some people, all across the U.S., some people all the way out in Alaska, and it's been fun to watch them. It's a mobile tire flat repair service out there, and they just drive to where their customers are and fix their tires. So it's been cool to see the variety of businesses on the platform.
That is cool. And is the vision to launch out of is the mobile mechanic in car repair the first vertical, or is the view to kind of just that vertical is so big, if you could just win that, then it would be success?
Yeah, we're definitely looking to branch out of that. we have a lot of good experience in there because we've done it ourselves and
Yeah.
we've seen what it takes to run a mobile automotive business. But honestly, the automotive business is not all that quick moving, right? And so there are a lot of brick and mortar shops that just, their customers are asking for a more modern way to, go mobile and bring the service to your customer right at their home. But a lot of these shops, need some help to be able to do that, right? A lot of the dealerships are a little slow moving and aren't really ready to make that transition.
Yeah, from every mechanic I've been to, that's to say the least. It's like, man, I feel like I'd say small businesses are just inherently difficult to sell into, but I've always found that it's like restaurants are difficult, but at least they turn over pretty quickly, and there's a lot of them. Barbershops always to me seem like the most old school. It's like they take pride in having no mobile booking. Every time I book a barbershop, I have to call in. They're like, "Oh, we don't have any electronic booking. We're looking into that one of these years." But yeah, mechanics as well. There has to be some ranking, I'm sure, of the old school mindset across different small businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there is a variety. I would just say that some of the shops are kind of old school like that.
Yeah.
We do things like we try and when we're looking to who to reach out to and that kind of stuff, we will look for which ones of them already have some sort of web presence, right? Which of them have good reviews on Yelp and Google and other platforms like that. That sort of tends to point to the more modern ones. But honestly, we've been talking about this internally. I think there's kind of a sea change coming in this, because when you think about a lot of these small shops, whether you're talking auto mechanics or maybe even, I don't know, about your local barber shop or something, a lot of them are starting to transition where like it used to be owned by, the baby boomers or something. And now, it's being handed off to the millennials, and where these people are taking over the business, they kind of want something that reaches their customers in a new way. Right. And so that's, I don't know, I think we're going to see it in other industries too.
It has to happen, right? I mean, like there's only, if this is really, we're talking about a mindset, and that mindset is so dependent on the technology that you're born and raised with. And you and I'm in my mid 30s, I'm 34. When I was in college, Facebook was just coming out. So I was 2008, 9, 10. I mean, it's not that long ago. And now the expectation is I want everything mobile. I want to be able to order groceries, car repair, buy a car, have everything shipped to me, delivered to me, handled, booked, ordered, paid for at mobile. And you're right. Like that wave can't not happen. How did you think about the technical infrastructure when you joined? Did you how did you prioritize across, I guess, what you were most familiar with personally, what you thought technically would be the best fit for the company, and maybe what was most modern or interesting to attract new people? But I'm curious, how did you decide what tools to use when you joined?
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic question. It's a tough one to answer more generally. I'll start with this. So most of our stuff is built on top of AWS. We use React for a lot of our front end stuff, and we use Python on the back end. So I'd say, we try to strike this balance between things that are modern and, readily supported, but also not things that are bleeding edge, right? When you're, I think a lot of people these days get tired with the revolving door of JavaScript frameworks that just change every couple months. React is one of those that seems to have stuck around for long enough that it's well supported. It's got a lot of people using it. We didn't really know that for sure at the time, but I'm glad we made the choice when we did. It seemed like a good one so far.
Yeah. And before Zippity, you were at Amazon for a while, for a number of years. Did you have experience building on top of Amazon technology while you're at Amazon, or what were you doing exactly when you were in Amazon?
Yeah. So I was working on Amazon Fresh, the grocery delivery business, and Prime Now, the ultra fast 1 hour delivery business. I got to build a lot of stuff on top of Amazon Web Services back then too. One of the things I found really interesting is, so I joined in 2013. I started at Amazon in 2013, and at that time there was this whole move sort of toward using, I don't know, a few years before that, I'm told that they were using a lot of sort of hand-built tools and things like that were similar to their AWS equivalents, but that were internal only. And then, while I was there from 2013 to 2017, things were really quickly shifting toward just using AWS for everything inside the company. And I think that's just I think that's really valuable for the engineers who are working there, because it means that you're not just learning some skill that only benefits you while you're at the company. You actually get to keep the skill afterward, use it at other employers, right? I think it's been a really helpful shift.
Yeah. I mean, man, really, if you think about it, I don't know if you were a part of this discussion or had even heard about it in the hallways, but Amazon, it seems to have pioneered this mentality of let's build something. It seems like they were pioneers in sort of two business modes or business operating mindsets. One is let's start with one vertical, double down on that vertical, win that vertical, and then expand out with the books and then going to everything. And then the other is let's solve a core problem for ourselves and then take that product that we've solved and productize it and offer it to the world. Both of those things are kind of orthogonal to what people typically think of when they think of launching new businesses. You picture executives sitting around a table and they're like, well, let's go into this area because the market size and the competitive landscape, and you throw a team at it. But it's not how that ended up playing out. Were you a part of how Amazon launched AWS, or how that even went from internal tool to outward?
No, I was not involved in any of those kind of things. I guess I was a few years too late for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really great when you have the opportunity to do that, right? Coming back to Zippity, I mean, like I said, here at Zippity, we started as a mobile automotive business, had technicians going to people's homes and doing this stuff. And so just by necessity, we built the software for ourselves. And then sort of over time, once we built out the feature set, said, let's start bringing this to other people. You don't always have the opportunity to do that, but I think when you do, it means that you're really close to the customer. You really understand what a business actually needs to run. I think it's really valuable when you can do that.
Totally. And how did you end up getting connected to the other founder, or the founder of the company?
Yeah, it was really just happenstance. I was at this conference and got to hear Ed, our CEO, on a panel. He was talking about what it takes to build a startup team, and who the types of things you put in place to build the culture of a team that values learning and values respect amongst each other. And I mean, I actually just went up to him after the panel and asked him a couple of questions. We started talking via email, and I think it was like 2 weeks later that I joined full time. It was pretty quick.
Wow. So you probably had been thinking about wanting to leave and join a smaller company for a while. I'm sure you didn't just walk in there on a whim, right? Is that right?
Yeah. When I was at Amazon, I really enjoyed my time at Amazon. I met a lot of great people, learned a lot of great things. But I'd say that there's something special about working at a small company, right? There's something special about working at a startup where you're part of it's kind of a crazy notion, right? But you're part of a small team that has big goals and wants to change an industry together. And so, yeah, I had decided to leave my job at Amazon at that point, and was really just looking for a place that I thought was a really great startup to get that kind of experience.
Yeah. And you guys are based in Boston, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Though these days, a lot of remote work. We have people all across the country.
Yeah. And will you continue to grow the company completely remotely, or do you view it'll be some sort of hybrid between in-person and remote?
Yeah, I think like a lot of businesses, we're choosing that hybrid approach. Mm-hmm. We're probably more on the side of remote than on the side of in-person. But what we're planning on doing is we think it's really important to get to see your coworkers and know who they are personally, and just have it's hard for the technology team to get to listen in on sales calls, or get to hear conversations with actual customers all that frequently. And it's so much easier when you're in person to do those sorts of things. So not to say that that's the only way to do it, but what we're planning on doing is twice a year, bringing everyone out to some city and flying in the whole company. I mean, when you don't really have a headquarters, you can sort of be flexible and choose whatever city makes sense. So we'll twice a year we'll fly people out and do a week of in-person sessions.
Yeah, that's awesome. We did that. My last company, we were remote. We had a remote engineering team and remote product team, and the rest of the company was in offices in Los Angeles. And we actually had developers down in Argentina, which is kind of how I started Outer Labs. And we flew them up. We did one per year, which twice per year, it actually comes around quick.
Yeah.
you find that it takes a lot of planning and work. So I found, you're probably thinking about where you're going to go and booking reservations at least 2 months in advance. And so you probably have someone almost dedicated to setting up the logistics for doing that. But when you do get everyone in person, it's amazing how you don't need a lot of time together, even 3 days together, if you're spending all day together and you're emphasizing getting to know people more so than just talking about work. And that ends up being more constructive and productive for relationship building than it would be if you're, just around people all the time. There's this it's kind of a heuristic, but it's how I sort of think of this is when I lived in LA, I had a roommate and we didn't talk, like most roommates do who meet online. We were great and very respectful for each other and got along. But I didn't really get to know him, because we didn't spend a lot of time together. And then after a few years, we moved into different places and we got together and we would hang out intentionally. And it was only when we hung out intentionally that we really got to know what we cared about, what kind of things we're into. It's I think it's almost this illusion that if you're physically close to people, then you just start to know them, but it takes real intention. So I fully support this idea of having a bi-yearly or once a year, twice a year, where you're we're going to get together and we're going to get to know each other. And then it carries forth, you're talking online and you still have the relationship in your mind. So yeah, good for you guys. I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, just having that personal connection makes it so much easier when you're not sure whether to ask someone, to do you a favor to help out a customer or something, right? It's it's so much easier when you already have a history built with that person. You can just sort of, rely on that too.
Yeah. How did you, I want to ask you kind of what you learned at Amazon, specifically something, but then how you translated it into the company culture now. At Amazon, what was the structure of the engineering team? Maybe both how you spec'd out what you're going to build, how that was assigned to people, how it was reported and praised, and how did you take that framework and then very similarly replicated, or what were the things that you found that you say we're gonna do this? We did this at Amazon, it worked really well. We're doing it at Zippity. I'm just so curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I guess I would say that there are a lot of differences between a really large and really small company, right? I think some of the things that I really liked and took away from that were we always had my team at Amazon had a really good demo culture. We would, bring not just our team together, but bring other people across the organization together. And, someone would get up in front of a projector and show people what the team had built. And, we'd have pizza, or, we'd do something to, mark the occasion, celebrate a little bit, get people excited about what was being built. And we've tried to do, it's not quite the same, especially in a remote setting, but we've tried to do some form of, celebrating wins. I think it's really important to celebrate wins in a startup too.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So would it be generally hey, we have an idea for building something, and then a team gets assigned to it. They scope out, key features of what an MVP looks like. I'd imagine these are relatively small teams, even inside of Amazon. They build it. They get to a point where it's ready to be probably beta tested, maybe not quite released to the wild. You present it internally. And then is there a mentality of testing it internally too? Are they trying to release it to people internally as sort of most startups, you can't do that. You're not big enough to, but when you're larger, you can almost use your first launch demographic as your own company. Is that how it went? I mean, I haven't worked for a large company, so I'm just kind of spitballing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we always used to talk about dog fooding, the idea of,
Sure.
testing things internally, eat your own dog food, but before you actually bring it to customers. And I think, hopefully that's not applied too literally at a place like Amazon Fresh doing groceries, but yeah, but it was always fun to, place orders ourselves. I used to, I used to order all my groceries from Amazon Fresh, and it was nice to try out some of those features, first, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, ordering groceries online is probably one of the top things that people have built in the world. I mean, whether it's Amazon Fresh or Instacart, to me, it's like if I can press buttons on my computer or phone and groceries show up at my door, that's arguably as valuable as like a washing machine or something where you're just saving so much time, and it's more efficient on the back end too. People can just shop, and that's the other thing about technology that I don't think it's appreciated enough from people who use it, consumers, is that on the back end, things can be more efficient and they can be cheaper because of that, because you're more efficient. Like you guys are, what you're really selling to the repair shops is you're selling efficiency. You're saying, hey, instead of spending X amount of time, 5 hours doing scheduling and billing and logistics, you can now use this tool, decrease the time it takes to do that. And on the front end, people don't really see all that cost savings and time savings. They'll just say, hey, this is cheaper. It's faster for me. And the same kind of general rules apply. I mean, in some level, it's kind of basic to what software does, but it's also astonishing and really not that old to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have these stats on, the amount of drive time that we save our professionals using our platform. And I think one of the things we've tried to show them is, look, if you save drive time by using our software, if we can optimize and say, go to your customers in this order, and that saves you fuel on the road, we've run some numbers, and they can actually just pay for the software just on the fuel they've saved. So
wow, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not the only reason to use it, but it does make things more efficient too.
Yeah. When you guys do build product in-house at Zippity now, how are you doing that? Are you speccing out kind of, are you like, what tool, maybe if you could talk about the specifics, is like what tools you're using to spec out product and then assign tickets to people? Like, how does the engineering, what's the day-to-day look like on the engineering team?
Yeah. We sort of use a loose form of agile, I would say. We do 2-week sprints. Sometimes we follow it a little more closely than other times, but yeah, we'll get together with our product managers, and we'll do a prioritization session, figure out what are the most important things to work on. Divide those. I mean, it's a couple week process, but divide those down, prioritize them, divide them into individual epics, which each have a customer, and we say, here's what this thing would do for our customer, and then it goes down to estimation and assigning it to individual people to work on during the sprint.
Do you guys use OKRs internally, objectives and key results, or do you have how do you know what is most important if you don't use OKRs?
Yeah, we haven't been using those as much recently. One of the prioritization frameworks I really like, I think it was popularized by Intercom. It's called the RICE framework. RICE stands for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. And so you say, look, how many of your customers do you think this will reach? How big an impact will it make? Is it 5 times as good as the current version, or just twice as good? How confident are you? Maybe this is a long shot. Maybe this is, look, it's got a 5% chance of working for them, but we think if it does, it's a game changer. And then how big is the effort? How much time does it take to build? And so you take those 4 together, and that's that gives you a pretty good sense of prioritization, and then you can make small adjustments from there.
So would it be to say you score it on a 1 through 10, and then you add up each of them together, and whatever is the highest is the winner?
Exactly. Yeah. Reach the reach, impact, and confidence are all positives, and then the effort you divide by the effort, because that isn't negative for it.
Yeah. Interesting. And are you using that now?
Yeah.
Internally? Yeah. Oh, that's great. I hadn't heard of that one. I'm a big fan of Intercom though. We use them, and they seem to be pioneers in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, I think Intercom's great. I mean, you see that little chat widget on so many websites these days.
I know. Yeah. Now there's a lot of competitors to them, and I don't know how differentiated that is, but yeah, all in all, great company. It's interesting, and that's in contrast, I guess. Obviously, a bigger company, Amazon, is going to be much different in terms of how priorities flow up. But in a smaller company, you can test, iterate. I also feel it's sometimes harder to know. I find tough to answer those questions sometimes, like how confident you could be in launching something. Sometimes really, I think you're most confident around how much effort it's going to take. And even then, right, estimating software is notoriously difficult. Do you have when you assign tickets and assign weights to people on the team, do you have anything that you've learned over the years in terms of how you can, if there's any lessons you teach your younger self on how to manage other engineers?
On managing others. This doesn't exactly answer the question, but going back a second, I guess. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, we were talking about the frameworks at Intercom, and then I was thinking about because we work with a lot of different clients, and one of the things that people will express as a frustration is that this software took. I mean, no one complains it was too fast, but they'll say, companies will set a deadline, and then things will take longer. It's almost there's a great Quora post on what estimating software times are, and it's like if you're on a hiking trip from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you just calculate the distance and you say, well, we're going to hike about 3 miles an hour, and you just say, well, it's going to take us about 2 weeks to get there. But in reality, you're going down hills. We lost a shoe. There's a dog here. The road's closed. We slipped on sand, and all those things are so difficult to predict. So I'm wondering if there's a piece of advice that you'd give to yourself when you're younger on managing people and sort of making that process smoother.
I don't have too much in terms of words of wisdom for this. I would say over communication is always best. Whether it's to internal stakeholders or external people. You may think that you're repeating the same thing 5 times in a row, but it can take that long before it really sinks in, right? So just making sure people know early if you think that something's at risk or at risk of slipping, if dates are changing in one way or another. The only other thing I was going to say on this was, the only thing other thing I was going to say on this is that it's sometimes along the way while you're building something, you realize you shouldn't be building it, right? Like you think that you were talking about confidence before, right? You think this is the right project for your customer, the right product to build or the feature to build. And then along the way, you're doing more research and you find out actually we were wrong, right? And I think too often people just sort of lock into, well, we said we were going to do it, right? And they just keep going on what they said they were going to do, get it across the finish line. I've heard that before, but it's really not a bad thing if you learn along the way that wasn't the right thing to build, and you talk about it as a team. You start over and say, what actually should we be building? But it's so much better to find that out before launching or before putting all the effort in rather than finding out afterward.
Yeah, and it's difficult because if you're running on 2-week sprints, part of the 2-week sprint process is that by the time you're done with the sprint, the product team has the next week's worth of work lined up. So you're doing retrospective and you say, this is how it went. This is what I was able to do. And then you're saying, okay, let's talk about the next 2 weeks. Here's all the tickets that are already beautifully specced out and they're weighted, and we assign them to different people. But in reality, which is probably more often than not, where you're recalibrating what you should build, it's Yeah, in my experience, sometimes it's a frustrating experience for engineers because engineers want to build. And if you don't know what to build, they're sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs, right? And it could be frustrating.
Yeah. I mean that's why it really struck home when you said, "What would I tell my younger self?" I was definitely of the mindset that, look, it may not be exactly the right thing. Like we learned some things along the way, but we should still. I want to see this get used by customers, right? That can definitely be a mindset, um, and it is important as an engineer. I think one of the biggest factors to morale is, are people actually using what you've built? Do you feel like the effort that you've put in is actually making a difference out there? So it does matter. You don't want to scrap every project you work on, but I think if it happens a small percentage of the time, and if you can catch it before, it's the sunk cost fallacy, right? If you've gone a quarter of the way through a large project, you've done 1 month out of a 4-month project, and you realize that wasn't what you should be building. It's worth putting putting that to the side and starting on something else.
Yeah. Although, it is way easier to say this on a podcast casually as we sit back, but then you're in the trenches and you're like, oh man, but I just, usually it's like I solved a really hard problem. I did something, maybe I'm 30%, 40%, 50% of the way there. And now it's just as you're saying, morale, people love to see their products being used in the world. It's not even that it's like the worst would be I work really hard and I don't even get to release the product. That would be it's like second would be I work hard, I release it in the world, and not enough people use it. That's okay. It's like, look, we took a bet. But the worst is like we work really hard and then we don't even release it. And I think I read Apple does this a lot. I think Amazon probably less so because they seem to be in the mood of just launching a lot of products. But Apple is very careful with what they launch. They have a lot of R&D. They're probably building some really beautiful products behind the scenes, but they don't launch them because it's just, they want to take a few stabs and have really big businesses, which you got to respect that game. It certainly works for them. But it is kind of soul crushing. They're one of my favorite engineers, Brett Vicker. I don't know if you know him. He was the early design engineer on the iPad and the iPhone, I think. And he left Apple and has doing his own thing now. But this was one of his biggest frustrations. And so I think, what is the culture? How does a CTO, I'm not a CTO, you are. How does a CTO design a culture intentionally, or at least try to foster the type of culture that gets people excited? There's certainly things you can practically do, like launch good products, but that kind of backs into having a good structure to the engineering process. But are there intangibles that you do that you've found to be really helpful in building a good culture on sort of the softer side of management?
Yeah, I try. I certainly don't have all the answers, right? But I think this goes back to one of the things we were saying earlier. Is it's really important to celebrate the wins, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to get hung up on like, well, there's this bug here, or this didn't work quite as. Whenever you get a performance review or something, even if it's 9 positive things and 1 negative thing, you'll focus on the negative to try and fix it, right? But I think that's why it's so important that we celebrate wins, and we do that publicly, and we get people excited about this mission that we're all building together. I think respect is also really important, and it's so much easier to I don't know. It's so much easier to do the work together and put in sometimes long hours and put in a lot of effort to get this thing done if you have a culture of respect where you assume the best of other people instead of assuming the worst, right? You get to know people, get to know them individually as a human, not just as someone who can do work. I don't know, these things they all probably fit into soft skills, like you said, but I think they're more important than the hard skills. Yeah.
And you're right. I think of it almost like they're equal but different. I went to school for mechanical engineering, did undergrad mechanical, and I had one teacher who would say engineers are only doing 2 things: they're building and then they're communicating what they built. but most people focus all their attention on the building process and not the communicating what you build process. And in a way that's justified, right? Because building is technically much harder, and very few people can do that. If you can only communicate and you can't build, you can't be an engineer. But if you can only build and you can't communicate, it's like, I think of it as a ceiling. You're always going to have some position somewhere because companies need smart people. But there'll either be one of two things will happen. You'll experience a turnover process, where you're working at a company and then things just don't work out. And then you work at another company and things just don't work out. And you're on maybe a 3-month to 18-month cycle. And you might even work for great companies, but you're never really connecting with other people in the team. You get in there and you knock out something. These are usually like the lone horse type of mentality. The people who don't integrate with the rest of the team. They just kind of, I often find that personality-wise, they're the perfectionists. They're the ones who can't accept doing anything hacky or anything imperfect. They want to just build it themselves. I know a few people like this. And the other is there tends to be, if you don't communicate well what you built as an engineer, there tends to be this ceiling where you can't quite, it's almost like you can't accelerate in the group. You can't raise up in the group as a leader because people are only looking at you for what you're technically capable of doing, not your ability to think broader or inspire other people. So I don't know what it is about different people and their ability to do that, but
yeah. I mean, it makes sense when you say, when you were studying engineering that they talked about these two sides of it. I think I'm glad to hear it that they emphasize both sides, right? Because I think a lot of people in technical fields, myself included, think that the technical is the early on, especially think technical is the most important and most challenging part, and sort of, look at things like sales and marketing as as an afterthought, right, or something that someone else will focus on. But I think we all have. I think to be a really good engineer. I think to be a really good engineer at a startup, I think you have to be product minded. I think you have to be putting yourself in the customer's shoes and thinking about how to communicate that to the customer, right? I don't think that is just a job that can be relegated to someone else, because that can also influence what you end up building too,
Do you think in a bigger company, like say if you're over, say 1,000 employees, maybe over 5,000, that there are spaces where people who are very technically sharp and knowledgeable and capable, but they really don't mesh well with other people? Maybe there's departments they can work in, or I don't know if is that more, do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, you saw me catch myself and say, at least at a small company. I think at a large company, you can separate the roles of, marketing a product versus building a product. Those maybe can be separated a bit more. I think communication still matters a lot, though, right? Like if you're, I don't know, I just think of the whole code review process. You don't, if your code works according to the machine but doesn't make sense to other humans, it's not going to work, right? Like it needs to be understood, and the maintenance of software is so much bigger than the initial building of it, right? So I think communication, both, in comments, documentation, but also in, being able to tell and communicate to your coworkers why you made certain choices or why certain things are important. That's important no matter what size company you're at, in my opinion.
Awesome. And where are you guys today? Are you currently hiring more people or fundraising, or are you guys in the grind mode now? Where's the state of things?
Yeah, we're probably a combination of all three. We've hired a couple people recently, so we're not actively hiring right now. But if I can put a plug, getzippity.com/careers is where we post our jobs, and we're definitely going to be hiring again soon. I'd say of the three, we're probably mostly in the grind mode right now. Though that sounds a little too negative. I guess I would say we're building.
I love it. I love the grind. The grind is where productivity happens, and I love it. When you're out there and you're selling something, or you're Yeah, I think of the grind as like product. You're producing something. You're just
Yeah.
you're building bricks on the house.
Yeah.
But you need a balance. You can't be grinding all the time. Then you you get burned out.
Yep, definitely.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a great team there, Matt. Congrats on all the progress with Zippity and with whatever else you do in the future. Anything else you'd want to throw out to people? Obviously, if you're looking for car repair, check out Zippity. And if you're a merchant and running a business, consider it as a good option to make your business more efficient. Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else. This has been great talking to you, Mike.
Yeah. Thanks for the time, Matt. And I'm really stoked to work with you. A huge motivating part for me is I've started 4 companies and raised money and sold 3 of them. And I love just being close to and working with startup founders. So, being an Otter and getting to work with you guys is a pleasure. So thank you, sir. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks.
All right, man. Have a great day. All right. And